Greetings. Today we begin number 17 of our Names of God series, the compound name Jehovah Cela. The text is found in the 18th Psalm, verse 2, where it says, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my strength, in whom I will trust, my buckler and the horn of my salvation, and my high tower." Now, the inscription of this 18th Psalm gives us the contextual background in which we are to understand David's words. To the chief musician, a psalm of David, a servant of the Lord, who spake unto the Lord the words of this song in the day that the Lord delivered him from the hands of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul, and he said. The author was David, the servant of the Lord. It is addressed to the chief musician, and it is David's praise to God for God's deliverance from all of David's enemies. The historical context has to do with the aftermath of Saul's disobedience as recorded in 1 Samuel chapter 15. Because of that, it said God would tear the kingdom away from Saul's son and give it to someone else, and that someone else was David. In 1 Samuel 16, God sends Samuel to anoint David as the king who would succeed Saul. Ironically, David is sent to Saul to play music to calm him during his times of the troubling of his spirit and mind. In 1 Samuel 17, David is used to slay the giant Goliath, ushering him to prominence over Saul, as we find in 1 Samuel 18:7. And the women answered one another as they played and said, "Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s." Verse 8 continues, "And Saul was very wroth," he was very angry, "and the saying displeased him, and he said, They have ascribed unto David 10,000s, and to me have they ascribed but thousands. And what can he have more but the kingdom?" And verse 9 says, "And Saul eyed David from that day and forward." The very next day, Saul tried to kill David 2 times. 1 Samuel 18:10 says that it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house, and David played with his hand as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand, and Saul cast the javelin, for he said, "I will smite David even to the wall with it." And David avoided out of his presence twice. However, 2 of Saul's children, David's best friend Jonathan, and Michal, David's wife, whom was the promise that he received for killing Goliath, loved and protected David from their father. Saul attempts to kill David with a javelin a 3rd time, according to 1 Samuel 19:10. And Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with the javelin, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. He goes on to tell us that David returns home and his wife Michal, but he has to flee for his life because during the night, Saul has determined to kill him the next morning. Verse 11 says, "Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him and to slay him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, If thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain." And from that day onward, Saul actively sought to find and kill David. And in 1 Samuel chapter 20 and verse 31, we reveal the motivation for Saul's commitment to this. Speaking to Jonathan, Saul says, "For as long as the son of Jesse liveth upon the ground, thou shalt not be established, nor thy kingdom. Wherefore now send and fetch him unto me, for he shall surely die." This is contrary to what God has said. Saul is fighting against God. And were it not for Jonathan's aiding David in avoiding Saul's plot against him, and we know this is divine providence, David knew he was in extreme danger of losing his physical life. So in 1 Samuel 20, verse 3, David sware moreover and said, Thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes. And he saith, Let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But as truly as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, there is but a step between me and death. Saul continues to pursue David until David is forced to take refuge among the Philistines, the kinfolks of that giant Goliath. And they propose to kill him also. But God delivers David from the Philistines in a very unique way, for which he praised God in the 34th Psalm. But that's another sermon altogether for another time. Therefore, with a clear understanding of all this background information, we're now ready to examine the name of God, which David sets before us in Psalm 18:2. David calls him his rock because of all of God's providential care toward him and all of the above mentioned circumstances. And of course, there would be more instances which are recorded after these.